Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast presented by PrizePicks. I'm your host, Samantha Previte. On today's episode of 21 Questions, I am so happy to be joined by the one and only Troy King, who is a content creator at Yahoo Fantasy and Footballguys, who you can find on Twitter at @TKingMode. Welcome to the Fantasy Flex. Troy, how was your week 5?
My week 5 was good. I would say that some of my leagues, I think the leagues I cared about the most, it's in a tight matchup. So it's coming down to Monday Night Football. I think it's a little bit every week. Some weeks my teams dominate, some weeks my teams just are disappointing. So it's a mix of all that. But overall, I say I had a pretty good week. I hope you did as well. And I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, my week has been not super great, I would say, especially like some of the advice that I gave was it just, like some things happened. I got roasted for I didn't even recommend Alex Collins. I just said that I was in the unfortunate situation that I had to start Alex Collins, and people were like, that Alex Collins take was trash. And I was like, I don't know, like it wasn't like I was nearly the only person that said
I played him too. I mean, Look, you running backs, look, there's a lot of injuries that going on. You play who's a healthy body, so I don't blame you.
Oh my goodness, the injuries this week. Good Lord. I don't even know, like it was just crazy. It felt like every play on Red Zone, I was seeing someone go down. Obviously, Max Williams is out for the season. Saquon Barkley probably only going to miss a couple weeks. We'll kind of go into that a little bit. But and then who else were like
Juju? I know it's like Juju's done. CH is going to be out for a little bit.
Yeah, those are all huge injuries. So definitely a bummer. I hate to see that for Juju. It definitely, like, he obviously took a pay cut to go to the Steelers and stay at the Steelers rather. And, he's not getting hurt by milk crates. He's, out there actually getting hurt by football. So it's, I wish him a speedy recovery, of course. And same with CEH. I haven't really seen a timetable updated or anything like that, but hopefully that's only a few week type thing. And yeah, what a game last night. The Chiefs and Bills. What a game.
So entertaining. I actually fell asleep, just being honest with you. I fell asleep in the beginning of because of the weather delay. I'm on the East Coast. I'm like, man, I gotta be up early in the morning. But I caught, the highlights in the morning of the second half. And look, the Bills did their thing. The Chiefs, I'm worried about the Chiefs in terms of real football. Fantasy, they'll be fine. But I'm surprised they're struggling so much.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised as well. And the Bills just looked so good. It wasn't even necessarily that I thought the Chiefs looked bad. The Bills just looked so much better, like in their own sort of stratosphere. So yeah, and I totally feel you on that. I was at a restaurant watching, and then I saw like there was a delay. So I was like, oh, all right, maybe I'll like go home. And then I forgot that there was football because it was so late. I was like, wait, there's still a game happening. So yeah, we were blessed with that game. We were blessed with the Browns Chargers game, which was everything that we hoped the Seahawks Rams would be.
Oh my gosh.
I was certainly bummed about that one. Obviously had a lot of exposure to a number of guys in that game in general, as I think a lot of fantasy managers would have.
I sure did. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, it's just never a good way to start the week when you're kind of in a hole, which I was with Russell Wilson. And I had Matt Stafford too. So like in 2 different leagues. And I was just like, well, that's quite the way to start the week.
Oh no.
But got to get back on the horse and keep moving. All right, let us just hop right in. I'm going to ask you some just random questions about your background, and then we'll jump into some real fantasy stuff. So
let's do it.
Awesome. What year did you start playing fantasy, and did you win your first league?
I did not win my first league. So my first league ever was a family league. I believe I actually missed the playoffs. It was my first league ever, a family league. My brother, I remember, won that league. So I tried not to count that one. That was back in, I think, 2014. My first like real league that I was actually competitive in, or actually really cared about. The family league, I was just learning fantasy, and I was like, kind of messing around. In my work league in 2015, that was competitive because against all my coworkers, and I didn't want to lose. I didn't win that league either. I got kicked out of the first round of that league, but it was fun. But then after that, I started winning, different leagues that I was in, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And then Yeah, so that's kind of how it all started. But yeah, I definitely did not win my first couple tries at fantasy.
I did win my first year, but it was definitely beginner's luck. I tell this story a lot because I started 0-5 in that league, but it wasn't like an 0-5 team. It was just a team that kept like losing to the highest scorer type thing. And I was like gonna give up because it was my first year, and like as a beginner, you're just like, oh wow, I really suck at this. Like it's terrible. But yeah, I made some trades and I ended up winning the league. I did have help, obviously. At the time I was dating someone who was very into fantasy. So there was definitely help, but yeah, I will always remember that league. What are the best and worst parts of playing fantasy football for you?
I would say, I apologize for my dogs, but I would say that the worst is, I mean, just the random injuries that happen. So the random injuries that happen are definitely frustrating. When I don't get a take right, when I recommend to play somebody and they just end up just not being good, that's absolutely frustrating. Besides that, I would say, just I would say move my guys don't hit. When I recommend somebody, I think that's really what's frustrating. Or when I'm projected, when I think I have a stud lineup and my studs underperform,
Mhm.
that's frustrating as well. So those are, I would say, are some of the most frustrating things for me.
And the best parts.
The best parts is just the competitiveness, winning money, competitiveness. Because I'm a competitive guy, so I like to challenge my friends. I like to beat them, and I think everyone likes to be right. Like if you do some research, and I also, as well as I like when my recommendations help other people, because you put in a lot of research. There's a lot of people who happen to listen to you and take your advice, and when your advice is right, that's very rewarding. Or if also like random guys, like when I see, I guess like my receipts from the summer, if I recommended, hey, this guy's going to be a late sleeper and he ends up doing well, that makes me feel good. It's like, okay, like, because we're wrong a lot in this industry, right? We get a lot of things wrong. And I'm not afraid to tell people, hey, I was wrong about this. I get things wrong every single week, but when you get things right, it feels good. So I think that's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's weird that I get almost more gratification from like takes that were right than
Yeah.
even like my own team winning. It's just, it matters to me, and it's great that it matters to you so much too, because it like the passion comes through in your work. So that is super important. All right, jumping into actual fantasy stuff. We are going to kick it off with a quick segment called the Burn Book, which is of course the Mean Girls reference. As fantasy managers, it is so easy to have recency bias, especially if a player has burned us either due to injuries or a bad week. So we are going to run through 5 players, and I'd like you to briefly tell us how confident you are in that player moving forward, or if they are in your burn book. So the first player is Justin Fields. He is a guy that we talked about like as a potential like locked in starter right out of the gate. He really just hasn't delivered though, and has finished his QB 34, QB 34, QB 32, and is currently QB 26 with 1 game left to play, just edging out Mike Glennon and Zach Wilson. Not the best company to be keeping. So does Fields belong in our burn book at this point? Is he like just completely out of the question for fantasy, or do you think he'll kind of bounce back and he'll be usable in the right matchups?
I think he will be usable in the right matchups. It's just I don't see it happening until towards maybe like the fantasy playoffs, right? If you're into streaming QBs, and it depends on what kind of league format you're in. If you're like in a typical redraft league, I'm not playing Fields. And I would say this, and we just got to give him a little credit. He's a rookie, right? And I think some people just have expectations. He was a high draft pick. He's a mobile quarterback. We think, oh, just because you're a mobile quarterback, you're going to be good for fantasy. And that's not always the case. Eventually he's going to be a really good quarterback in this league. But I think the Bears offense is just a mess in general. I don't want to put him in my burn book just yet. I want to say I'm going to hold out until the end of this season. Right now, if I had to choose today, then yeah, you're not playing him anytime soon because he's been killing you, and he's been killing like Allen Robinson, and he's hurt a lot of people, but it's not entirely his fault. So I would say, can I like have him like half in my burn book, half not in my burn book? Because again, I don't want to play him, but I think that he's going to be better down the line.
Yeah, it's obviously disappointing though. I've seen flashes of good things, and he obviously displayed a lot of just like I mean, these players are so like Teflon tough. He got shaken up in that game. And, I think better days are ahead. I think it's really that Matt Nagy is in my burn book at this point. So he's in probably every fantasy player manager's burn books at this point. But yeah, I'm hoping that he ends up being great. I have him in a keeper league, so I'm hanging on to him there, but dropping him in redraft.
Yeah.
All right. So the next player we're going to talk about is AJ Brown. 5.3 fantasy points in half PPR just isn't going to cut it. He's currently tied for wide receiver 58 for the week in a matchup that he should have really performed well in against the Jaguars and with Julio Jones gone. So is this whole Titans offense in your burn book? Is Ryan Tannehill in your burn book? Or is AJ Brown? I really don't know. Like, are you viewing him as a wide receiver one rest of season or no? Is he kind of falling out of that?
Wide receiver one, I think he's kind of falling out of the top 12, but he's not in my burn book. He's somebody that, like, he's AJ Brown. We got to mention the injuries, right? He's been injured. He's been banged up, but he's obviously been disappointing. You expected in a great matchup for him to, be back in the lineup. Oh, you're excited to play him again. And he obviously let you down. He's not in, I can't put him in my burn because he hasn't had a fair shot. If he was healthy all these weeks and was still really bad, then he would be going my burn book. But I'm optimistic about AJ Brown. He's a great talent. I think him and Ryan Tannehill, once, AJ Brown's back to his old self, I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be back to his old self. You are seeing them not having Arthur Smith has clearly affected the offense. Derrick Henry's still Derrick Henry. He's really the only reliable piece. But I believe that they're going to figure it out. And AJ Brown is going to be the AJ Brown we all know and love in the coming weeks. But again, he's been injured, so I don't want to be too hard on him.
I agree. I think some people have been a little harsh on him just because they also see like, oh, he was injured, so he's just not producing for fantasy. Like, people get mad at players for injuries too. So, I mean, and if you're just looking at the numbers, yeah, of course, it's not the season that you would have hoped for as a guy that was probably going, I don't know, like third round or something like that. So hopefully they will turn it around. It's interesting that you said the thing about Arthur Smith because he is ruining the Falcons, but somehow his absence is ruining the Titans too. So
maybe he needs to go back to the Titans and everything needs to go be reset to how it was.
I know, right? I miss the Ryan Tannehill of old. All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is a guy that's very close to my heart, who is Leviska Chennault. Was on the field a bunch, but just caught one pass for 58 yards. I know this is probably more of a reflection on Urban Meyer, who has lots of things going on in his life, but wide receiver 52 in a soft matchup with DJ Chark out isn't great. Worth noting that Marvin Jones also didn't do anything either. So it's not like a matter of like, hey, this wide receiver outperformed. Like, I think like both of the tight ends did well. And that's pretty much it. And James Robinson, of course. So I don't know. How do you view Leviska Chennault rest of season?
So I want to give credit. I believe his name is Jared Smola on Twitter. I think that's what his name is. I've seen it on Twitter a couple of times. Leviska Chennault had a role change for some reason this Sunday, because from weeks 1 to 4, he's playing primarily out of the slot. But this week, he was playing on the outside. He barely played in the slot. And I think that had a lot to do with how he was used. Granted, he still should have received more targets. Tavon Austin was like, I believe he might have been like the leader in targets, if I'm not mistaken. I gotta go back and see, but I think he might have out-targeted Marvin Jones and Leviska Chennault, and which is bizarre. Again, that might have to go back to Urban Meyer and maybe his incompetence, but it was very disappointing, especially last week, how we saw him being used. You thought that, oh, it would translate into the weeks to come. We know that the defense was a soft matchup. So it was definitely disappointing. I don't know what to do with Leviska. I think that right now he might be more of a risky flex. We just got to see. I don't know if he's going to continue to be on the outside, if he's going to be put back in the slot, or if that's going to be Tavon Austin landing now. It's hard to tell, because again, the Jags offense is so unpredictable. In a way, they're incompetent. And so it's scary. And I'm definitely nervous. In terms of he's my burn book or not, I mean, I guess I'll put him in my burn book because he hasn't really done anything all season. He's gotten the opportunities in previous matchups in terms of targets, but he hasn't done a lot. He hasn't had even 1 week to show me, hey, like I'm gonna have confidence in you. So it's a combination of him and the Jaguars offense. So I think he might actually be in my burn book.
I'm kind of there with you right now. It's frustrating just how erratic this offense is. I think because since he was objectively a harder matchup and he did end up taking over a lot of those targets and looked really good. And I thought that he had, all right, he's got that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence right now, and this is going to work in this offense. And then he's like on a milk carton in week 5. So I don't know. I think it's really more just a matter of like the whole Jaguars offense is in my burn book. And yeah, I mean, for now, I think he's unplayable in most leagues, like unless it's a deeper league, but I'm not playing him in like a regular 12-team league. He is probably going on my bench just so I can see how like things shake out. Maybe this week was an anomaly, but hopefully the Jags get something going.
Agreed.
All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is Miles Sanders. He has not delivered since week 1 against Atlanta, currently RB 35 and half PPR. This time it wasn't even a workload concern because Kenny Gainwell barely saw any touches. And maybe it's the offense that's limiting Sanders because worth noting, like, I feel like the Eagles played terribly in that game and still won. It was
Awful.
kind of, it was terrible because it's my Carolina Panthers that they beat, of course, but they were losing that game for so much of it. But yeah, I mean, obviously that stuff doesn't really matter from a fantasy perspective, like what is limiting them. It just matters if they're producing. So are you putting him in your burn book? Just worth noting, the Eagles play the Buccaneers next week.
Absolutely. He's 100% in my burn book. This is not a wishy-washy one. He is easy. Like he's just, it's unfortunate. I thought that Jalen Hurts would be beneficial to Miles Sanders in terms of just efficiency of rushing, but it's a combination of that he's just not getting a lot of work. He's not seeing any targets. He's just, again, especially for where you drafted him, he's obviously not delivering. And he's nothing more. He's also somebody that if you're going to play him, you'll be praying for just basic flex numbers because or somehow he finds the end zone, which he hasn't really been in the end zone that much either. So it's just, again, he's been extremely disappointing, and I'm not starting unless I have to. The problem is from where you drafted him, you most likely don't have many other options on your team unless you happen to get lucky on the waiver wire and pick up some of those guys, some of the backups that are taking advantage of their starter being injured. I might play some of those guys over him, like maybe look P. Ryan, even though
I was literally just going to say P. Ryan
or Damian Williams, people like that. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather play them over Miles Sanders at this point because he's shown no upside. So yeah, he's firmly planted in my burn book.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He was actually a guy that I felt like in drafts, he was like the do not touch guy. Like he was staying on the board for so much longer than like I would have really expected. So I was definitely tempted at times. I did not take him, and I'm obviously glad. I have Gainwell in one league, which he's obviously not playable right now. I was kind of thinking that backfield was going to trend towards like a split situation, but Gainwell saw almost no work last week. So I think it's just a matter of this offense really not having its stride. And like, to your point, I really did think that Jalen Hurts was going to be better for the running backs and the running game in general. So that has been quite disappointing. So Sanders is in my burn book. The last guy that we will talk about in this segment is TJ Hawkinson. He has not scored more than 6 fantasy points in half PPR since week 2 and scored a disappointing 3.2 points this week. So obviously, side note, you gotta feel for the Lions who played their hearts out in that game. Like I have no skin in the game for this one, but Dan Campbell giving that press conference like made me tear up. But I don't know. Like, I don't know what the issue is here. Are you fading Hawkinson rest of season and putting him in your burn book?
So I think he's been a little bit banged up, but as of right now, he's in my burn book too. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because for his expectations, like I thought going into the season, because the Lions have absolutely no receivers, he could have been like, top 3, top 5 tight end easy. I thought it was going to be an easy scenario, but unfortunately he's stunk. And again, I think it might be due to the injury. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that, but like you can't play him. I'd much rather play guys like, Dalton Schultz and Dawson Knox, guys that you picked up on waivers. Like I'll easily play any of those guys ahead of Hawkinson. It's just, at some point in time, you can't just rely on the whole start your studs
Yeah.
theory, because your stud hasn't done anything studly since week one. So you're just killing yourself as just hoping that he is going to somehow outperform his expectations. And I'm just like, I'm not going to jeopardize my mental health hoping that this happens. I'll rather you stay on my bench, prove to me that you could be a good tight end. And then once you do that, then you could be in my starting lineup again. But as of right now, you're back in the burn book.
Yeah, I had the same reasoning as I think many people in the fantasy community did for ranking him so high going into the season, that there was no one there. It was like Quintez Cephas and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
And I was like, someone's got to get targets. And I thought that Jared Goff would like lock into him, and just maybe because Goff is not the best, like super downfield passer. So I thought that chemistry would be there. It's unfortunate though, we haven't seen him perform much since week one. Like you mentioned, tight end has just been like absolutely a hellscape though. Like if you looked at the list of the guys that did well this week, like I literally put it on Twitter and someone was like, you made Jesper Horsted up. That's not a real name. Like,
I remember I saw that. I saw him catch that ball. So I'm like, if I didn't see him, I might not have believed it either.
I know. So, I mean, it's tough because it is the exact argument that you're mentioning, that like start your studs thing, that a lot of people are probably still rolling him out and they feel like they have to, because there's kind of like that, like I spent a lot of draft capital on him, so I need to put him out there and he has this upside because he's a stud. But at this point, I don't know, like there's no one that I really want to trust in terms of pass catchers on that team. So yeah, Hawkinson is at least burn book adjacent for me. That will do it for this segment. Our next segment is called Full Send or That's Cap, which is sort of the opposite of that one. By the way, full send is like a ski term or extreme sports term. Basically, like if you're like going off a cliff or you're going for a jump, going full send is just like going head first, like diving into the deep end, going for it. And obviously that's cap would be the opposite. So our first player is Matt Ryan, finished as QB3 last week and will finish top 12 this week. Is this the Jets, or are you going full send on Ryan as a viable streamer after the team's week 6 bye?
Matt Ryan is so up and down this season. I know he's had, like you mentioned, he's had some 2 good weeks, but I'd rather not play him. I'd rather not play him just because of the unpredictability. You would think from the beginning of the season with Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts that this wouldn't even be a question, but he still makes me nervous. You know, yes, he's had a nice 2 weeks, but I think that's cap. I think that's cap. The only thing you're hoping for, because their defense is so bad that they're going to be in more passing situations. I don't blame anybody who's going to be streaming Matt Ryan. And again, there's going to be weeks where he's going to be good, but I'm not very confident in that offense. I just think it's going to be too inconsistent, too up and down. So for the time being, I'm going to say that's cap.
Yeah, the whole Falcons offense is a big swing and miss for me this offseason. I thought people were fading them too much, like it had gone too far in one direction. So I was like, hey, I'll take these guys. I'll take Mike Davis. Oh my God. Like honestly, not the biggest bust. We talk about him like he's the biggest bust. He wasn't, but this whole Falcons offense has not looked strong. And Calvin Ridley has been like just absolutely absent. I know he actually missed this game for personal reasons, but that's probably the best that we should all be talking about. I do hope that they find their rhythm. Like, are you taking like Calvin Ridley or Jamar Chase rest of season?
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, it's like not even a question. And that's like crazy because Calvin Ridley was like a top 3, top 4 receiver going into the draft.
And he's seeing the targets. He has a high target share. I think he's like has like a 25% target share or something around that realm. And he's getting like, 10 targets a game. It's just for some reason him and Matt Ryan aren't connecting, and it's just ugly. And that's what's so frustrating, because the opportunities are there. They're just not on the same page, or just whatever it is, the offense is just junky looking. So if they just start hitting on those targets that they're trying to feed Ridley, then he's going to be just fine. But based on what I've seen, I can't take him over Chase right now.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because they took Julio out or if it's Arthur Smith or if it's that offensive line, but certainly a concerning offense. All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is Kadarius Toney, an absolute monster performance in week 5, reeled in 10 of 13 for 189 yards. And he's currently wide receiver 6.5 PPR heading into Monday night. Are you going full send on Toney as a viable fantasy play rest of season? Or would you say his role right now is dependent on injuries to Slayton, Shepard, and Galladay?
So his role is clearly affected by all the, people that are hurt, Galladay, just like you said, Galladay, Shepard, Slayton, Saquon Barkley. So as long as they're hurt, he's going to be a very viable option. But it's just, he needed all these people to get hurt to be seen. Now he's always been very talented. That's why they took him in the first round. So if he gets the opportunities, then he's going to shine. My concern is that he's just not going to get those consistent opportunities once everyone's healthy. I mean, hopefully he's earned himself a role based off of his performance. Granted, he just got kicked out because he, threw a punch at the defender.
The helmet, I don't know, like that seems like a sus decision, but
I don't get it. People do that all the time. I think when you have the adrenaline going, you don't always think about these kind of things. But nevertheless, I think it's a scenario where I want him to be a thing. He should be a thing going forward based on his performance. But when you have the majority of your wide receiver core not healthy and then you're performing, it's hard to put too much confidence into that as right now. But it really depends on the timeline of when the other guys are going to be back on the field. I just don't see him automatically just jumping all the depth chart to the number 2 or number 3 option on the team. I think he's definitely benefited from everyone else being injured.
Yeah, yesterday was a day of victory lapping for Toney truthers all over Twitter. Certainly a lot of people were like, we told you so. And I was like, no, like this is a lot having to do with there being no one else there. At the end of the game, all they had was John Ross. Like, what a weird game. So yeah, I mean, I think I hope that he's earned a spot. I mean, Kenny Galladay now, I know he's hurt, but he looks like an expensive decoy. I don't know if they just don't know how to like shoehorn him into the offense correctly, or if he doesn't have chemistry, whatever it is. I do think that like, if I'd rather have one of those guys rest of season, I might say Toney. But yeah, in terms of like value, I do think it takes injuries to Shepard and Slayton, which is not too far-fetched because those guys have been on the injury report a lot. They're no strangers to that. So we shall see. I think I'm going like 75% send on Toney right now. The next guy we're going to talk about is one of your guys, Myles Gaskin. I sat him this week thinking there's no way he can put up production against Tampa. I was obviously wrong because he's going to finish as a top 5 back this week in half PPR. Most of his production, though, through the air, 10 catches on 10 targets for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns. Do you think that's fluky, especially since we've seen the way that like Malcolm Brown has been peppered in previous games? Or are you going full send on Gaskin being a viable fantasy asset rest of season?
I'm going to go full send. The reason why, though, is because I believe last week was an outlier. I think he only had like 2 rushes, 0 targets last week. But then this week, he has a career high in receptions. And I think game script is definitely part of it where, they were so behind and they're playing catch up. But the thing about it is that in most scenarios, the Dolphins aren't a good team. They don't have a good defense in terms of, allowing a lot of points. So the Dolphins are going to be in game scripts where they're going to be playing from behind. And that's where Gaskin is going to be on the field because he's definitely the best pass catcher. And also last week, and with Malcolm Brown having that role in terms of just the RB1, even though they didn't do anything, that's the problem. He didn't do anything. It's not like when they gave him the opportunity, he just shined. He looked very pedestrian, as well as every other week outside of last week. Gaskin has had the higher opportunity share, and he's had the most target share compared to the other backs. So I think on a more, so I believe even though he might not get 10 receptions again, it's more of an indicator of how he's been using the offense outside of week 4. So I think week 4 is a complete outlier in terms of how he's going to be used. we shouldn't expect performances like this again, but we should expect him to be highly involved, as well as after the game. Coach Flores, he mentioned how, hit gas control is going to be expanding and how they had to get the ball more. Now, is that coach speak? I don't know. But when you see your back being so productive, like none of the other backs have come close to what Gaskin did, this week. So I'm hoping that the Dolphins, are smart and like, hey, we probably should use this guy. Even though we lost, he's clearly our best option out of the backfield. So I'm confident that he should be utilized more going forward.
Yeah, I really do hope you're right. I hope that it was week 4 that's the anomaly, not week 5. I mean, obviously, I think both are kind of a little bit off what the average expectation for him each week will be. But I was totally wrong about this game. I thought Jalen Waddle was going to pop off.
Me too.
And I was all in on Jalen Waddle. I told people to start Jalen Waddle all week. So definitely a bummer there, but and obviously a bummer for me that I left him on my bench, but like, I'd rather have that guy because it means I have him moving forward. So yeah, it's maybe disappointing for 1 week, but certainly hope that is a sign of things to come. All right. Our next guy we're going to talk about is Elijah Mitchell. So this is kind of a weird one because it's not the most impressive fantasy performance. After coming back from a shoulder injury, he will finish in the RB 30 something range with 7.2 points in half PPR. That said, he had 9 attempts, and Juszczyk and Sermon each saw 1 attempt. Like, I don't know if Trey Sermon ran over like Kyle Shanahan's dog or something, but he clearly does not trust him. So, I guess like, what you can interpret from this is that like Mitchell feels like the RB1 in this offense, but are you going full send on him, or do you think trusting any Shanahan running back is cap?
I would say, based on the perspective that he's the RB1 in the offense, I'll say full send. So I'll say it's full send because Elijah Mitchell's been injured for a few weeks now. And his first game back, he gets the entire workload. Right? Sermon had the opportunity while Elijah Mitchell was gone to pretty much, I guess, quote unquote, steal the job. And hey, he was supposed to be the guy going into it, right? When most of us heard Trey Sermon was supposed to be the dude. They drafted him. So we assume for him to be the dude and run this offense. But for whatever reason, he hasn't gotten the opportunity. And it's been unfortunate. He looked kind of pedestrian. He hasn't been extremely impressive in the offense. So, but it's very concerning that this guy, who, again, he wasn't supposed to be a threat to your job in the first place going into the season. So then when Mostert was hurt, he already was running in front of you. Then he gets injured. And then as soon as he comes back, he takes your job again. So Sermon, yeah, you could, I feel like to me, he's pretty much droppable. Like there's nothing for you to, as long as Elijah Mitchell is on, healthy, Sermon's dust, right? So I think Elijah Mitchell, even though he didn't have a very impressive performance this week, he's clearly getting the opportunities. And I'm assuming with Trey Lance, he also didn't look great either. He ran a lot, but he looks like a rookie. But you're going to assume in future matchups, like, look, if they're close to the goal line, if they have a better game script, then, Mitchell is going to get those opportunities. And if he landed in the end zone, then we would be talking about him different. Like, oh, he's a viable starting option. But to me, I think he's definitely the RB1 on that team. Full send.
Awesome. Did you get him in any league, and how much did you have to spend for him?
It's funny. I actually didn't keep him very long. I only spent about 1/4 of my fab. But then when he got hurt, I had to make other moves. I have a short bench. This is my home league. So I had a short bench. So I actually let him go when he was gone a couple of weeks. So I had to get other backs because, I'm not doing well in my home league, unfortunately. I'm like 1-3. I'm like, I need players that could play. So I didn't keep on to him. But now he looked okay. And someone else got him. Like, it's a loss I had to take. But yeah, I know a lot of people spend like 100% of their budget on him. So I hope I'm right because of those people who spend all their money on them. That's for sure.
Yeah, and to your point, I am dropping Trey Sermon ASAP in one of my leagues. It's a 12-team league with not super deep benches. So I need to make room for guys that are not totally on Kyle Shanahan's shit list. Our final guy will be Dalton Schultz. I have a feeling I know how you're going to react to this one, but he has been on fire of late. Finished as tight end 1, tight end 6, and will finish top 9 this week, at least top 9 this week. Are you going full send on Schultz as a must start rest of season?
Yes, full send. I actually just put out a tweet today, pending tonight's game. He actually leads all tight ends this week in total tight end target share. For this week, he leads the tight ends in target share. I believe he's at 28%. So yes, he's a full send. I started him in my home league, and he's putting up decent points. Like, look, he's gonna be locked into my lineup because beginning of the season, we were wondering, was it going to be him? Is Blake Jarwin going to take the role back? And clearly it's Dalton Schultz time. He's clear. And I believe his production has hurt, I think, CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. We thought they were going to have, bigger production this season. And I believe that Dalton Schultz involvement has hindered their production, but it's good for anyone who owns Dalton Schultz or, rosters Dalton Schultz. So I'm very confident in him. And if you have him, continue to play him.
Yeah, he was quite a diamond in the rough sort of find on the waiver wire, because I highly doubt that he was more than 5% drafted, I would say. So yeah, if you have him, I think you definitely have to start him. All right, Troy, we have 8 more rapid fire questions. Question 13 is, name one player you just can't quit or you always find yourself making excuses for. So for me, that is Joe Mixon. I want to clarify that is Joe Mixon, the player, not Joe Mixon, the human.
I will say that I think Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is somebody that I've been high on for a while, and he's had a pretty good season this season. But, Rashad Bateman's coming back, so we'll see how his role is affected. Last year, for the most of the year, he was awful, but then he had a good back half of last year. He's been decent this year, so he's somebody I've been rooting for, and I'm going to continue to root for.
Yeah, he was looking like having this huge breakout at the beginning of the season, and then had kind of one game with 3 ugly drops that people were just roasting him for, which deservedly so. That's unforgivable. And the fact that they had to rely on a 63-yard field goal definitely is crazy. But yeah, I mean, you just watch him and you see this video game talent, and he is just really, really great. So I hope that his role remains there even when Bateman comes back, though I do think Bateman will eat into his targets a little bit. So we'll see how that all shakes out. Predict when the Dolphins will win their next Super Bowl.
Ooh, the next Super Bowl, I say 10 years. Oh, no. I'll say within the next 10 years, they'll win a Super Bowl. Hopefully, if I our GM, I like Brian Flores. We'll see. I mean, the team should have been a lot better this year. I thought we were going to be a wild card team. I don't think that anymore, but I like our leadership. So within the next 10 years, I think we can put a team together to win a Super Bowl.
Is that a reflection on Tua or not being the guy?
So with Tua, I just want to see how this rest of the season plays out. Obviously, he got injured. I want him to come back, be healthy, play the rest of the season, and we'll see. I just need to see some prompts. I think, again, he got hurt. The problem is when you get hurt, it's hard to evaluate. And then last season, it was his rookie year. And then the worst part is we are always comparing to Justin Herbert because he was drafted one spot ahead of him. So obviously compared to Herbert, he's an absolute disappointment. But I believe that he's a talented quarterback. I think that he could be a franchise quarterback, could be our franchise quarterback. I just need to see a little something before I'm, completely give my entire heart and optimism that we could win a Super Bowl with him.
Fair enough. Give us one Dolphins player you think is underrated for fantasy.
Devontae Parker. I think Devontae Parker, he was injured I was actually on him this week before it was a game time decision. I had a bold prediction he was going to be top 15. He was actually leading the team in target share. Surprisingly, it was barely over Jalen Waddle, but it was like almost a half percentage. But he was leading him, and I believe he might have been leading him in air yards or something along those lines. But he was, and unfortunately, Fuller's going to be out for a while. But he's the possession guy, and I was saying this during the summer how he's going to be benefiting from not just having the number one coverage. People have to obviously worry about Jalen Waddle, and you got to worry about Mike Gesicki. So I think that leaves Devontae Parker with not always the strongest coverage, and he's been utilizing the offense. So I think he's somebody that when he comes back, whether it's a DFS play or if you have multiple flexes, you can flex him. I think he can surprise some people.
Great minds must think alike, or just an average mind and a great mind, because he
Both of
was
our great
all
minds.
over my start sit article, just with Will Fuller out. And I thought it was such a good matchup against the Bucs secondary. Obviously not his fault that he missed the game though. So hopefully he is someone that is viable for fantasy moving forward. Was Joe Flacco ever elite? Yes or no?
Yes. I would say the 1 year, I'll call him elite. I'll say it was elite. Like, you won a Super Bowl, you did what you did in the playoffs, you were elite that year, but that was it. It was short-lived. It was a very quick elite moment.
Yeah, people do act like you have to be like to be elite, you have to be elite for your whole career. And like that's
Nah,
a very few number of players. Like it's Tom Brady, and then like I don't know,
yeah.
the list gets pretty short from there. So I agree with you there. Will any Dolphins player finish in the top 5 at their respective position for fantasy?
Mike Gesicki's the only one that has a chance. He's the only one that has a chance.
I've seen his
And
targets go up. Well, I mean, maybe this game wasn't as good, but the past 2 games he was getting peppered with targets for sure.
yeah, I think he might have been second this week in terms of target share. Gaskin was number 1. But yeah, he's been very involved in the offense, especially with Jacoby Brissett. Since he's been in the lineup, he's been looking for him. And look, he's a great weapon. So I would say that he has potential. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out, but let's see how long Will Fuller's out for. But I think he's the only one that has a shot at being top 5.
He is a guy that just confuses me because he bageled in week 1, had like 3 fantasy points in week 2.
Inconsistent.
I was like ready to drop him. Then he comes out of nowhere, not nowhere, but like certainly based on the previous 2 weeks, and produces really big in weeks 3 and 4. And then I don't know what to think about him rest of season. So I do hope he is a guy that is usable, because tight end is like the guys that you can trust right now. The list is very lean. Who should managers top waiver ad be this week, and why?
Oh my gosh. There's so many people that got injured.
I know.
I would say it's gonna be between Daryl Williams and I think maybe Devontae Booker.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. I would say give me, I guess, Daryl Williams. I mean, obviously with the CH role, so CH, he was like leading the league in like rushing attempts, and like he was like not leading the league, he was top 10 in rushing attempts, and he was top, I think, 10 in like rushing yards or something along those lines before he got hurt. So Daryl Williams, obviously he's in the Chiefs offense. So you want pieces of that Chiefs offense. Jerry McKinnon might eat into his workload, but I would say that he's probably the guy. You just want pieces of that offense, and they're going to get scoring opportunities. You're hoping that they go to him on the goal line, or Mahomes does a crazy trick play to him. So I'll say Daryl Williams.
Yeah, you definitely want exposure to that offense for obvious reasons, because they have so many weapons, but also because their defense is playing so poorly. They are allowing the most points per game. So expect a lot of shootouts there. I definitely like Daryl Williams as a top waiver ad this week. Give me one player who you think is primed for a big fantasy season next year.
Next year. I would say probably Justin Fields. I'll say a lot of the rookies, but I like all the rookies, but I'll say Justin Fields. I think, to me, he should have been a number 2 quarterback off the board this season. I've been saying that. I'm going to continue to say that, but I think Justin Fields, once he gets comfortable in this offense, we'll see what Nagy's there or not, but I think he's going to be a superstar in this league.
I do think it takes Nagy getting fired for him to reach his full potential. And I'm totally with you there, that I thought that some of the pre-draft stuff that was being said about him was just like ridiculous stuff. So I certainly was very high on him. Really bummed that the Panthers took JC Horn over him. Like, we could have had a franchise quarterback, and we have Sam Darnold.
That would have been amazing.
I mean, just think about how high DJ Moore's stock would be at that point. So a little bit disappointing, but yeah, I do think he will have a big fantasy season next year. How many attempts would it take you to make an extra point?
Give me like between 10 and 20, between 20 and 20. I think, look, kickers are really good at what they do. They're getting paid to do what they do for a reason. So an extra point, give me 15. I think if I got 15 attempts, I think I can make one.
Have you ever tried it? I've actually
No.
never, I mean, I don't think
I've never tried it, but I believe it's gonna take me like the first 10 are gonna be really ugly. So maybe after like the 11th one, I might get some semblance of a good kick in. We'll see.
I think it's funny. I did this like man on the street thing where I was interviewing people outside the home run derby, asking them how many batting practice pitches in Coors Field, juiced balls and everything, like how many batting practice pitches would it take you to hit a home run at a Coors Field? And most people were like, oh, 100. And this Boston guy literally has like a Boston shirt on, and he was like, 2, 1 warm up, and I'm knocking it out of the park. So seeing the range of answers for this question and that question is definitely funny. Finally, if you had one cardinal rule to tell someone just getting into fantasy this year, what would it be?
If you're just getting into fantasy this year, I would say be open-minded. Be open-minded. Don't and be adaptable. Be open-minded, be adaptable. Whether it's someone who's a content creator, whether it's your first time just playing fantasy football, I think open-mindedness and adaptability are two things that are going to be beneficial to you. You know, I feel like in fantasy, in terms of playing it, there's so many things that change. So you can't just be stuck on one take. So you got to be quick to change, quick to adapt, as well as, hey, if you're a content creator, you got to do the same thing. And the space is ever changing and you want to make sure you're kind of up to par with all the other content creators. So I'd say that's what I would say.
I definitely agree with you. I think there are too many people who have like hills to die on. Like they just get stuck on something. And like I am happy to admit when a take was wrong. I did not believe in Justin Herbert last year necessarily as the rookie of the year. And I certainly didn't believe in Josh Allen having the crazy breakout that he had last year. And those are bad takes and it happens. So yeah, I think it's important to be pliable. And to your point about like content creators, especially being open-minded about different types of content, I think we definitely totally get that. So it is great to hear from you. All right, that will do it for this round of 21 questions with our esteemed guest, Troy King. Troy, I cannot thank you enough for joining me during this insanely busy time. Please tell everyone where they can find you this NFL season.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me at T King Mode on Twitter. I'm also dabbling on Instagram and TikTok. You can find me at the same handle there. You can find my work at Yahoo. Yahoo Fantasy Sports. So I write weekly articles there every day. Tomorrow I'll have an article coming out, as well as I contribute to the bowl predictions on a weekly basis. Also, you can check out my work on Footballguys. You know, I come out with articles here and there, as well as I'm one of the co-hosts of their mailbag show on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So check that out. But Sam, I appreciate you inviting me on. I appreciate everybody who's been supporting me and is going to continue to support me. So thank y'all.
This has been so like, it's been so overdue for us to be on a podcast together. So I am so happy. You are such a great friend in the industry to have, and just like an overall great vibes person. So very, very cool to get to chat with you today. As a reminder, Sean Koerner and Chris Raybon are here on the Fantasy Flex every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, giving you guys all the DFS waiver wire and rankings info to help you guys dominate your fantasy leagues. I will be back this Thursday and every Thursday with my mailbag episode. Speaking of which, you should email any mailbag questions to mailbag@actionnetwork.com. Thank you again for listening. Please rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. Download us wherever you like to listen, and we will see you next time on the Fantasy Flex presented by PrizePicks. Peace out, y'all.